Cool. My name is Greg. Today, the title of my presentation, this is the year of UX. So I'm Greg, co-founder and CPO at ChainSafe, previously core protocol developer on Ethereum's consensus and a variety of other dev tools. I spent a lot of my kind of like independent time working on standards, which is super sexy, I know. And it's specifically in the wallet space, so extremely loving. But I think we're in a real special moment, a really special moment this year specifically. My presentation today was going to be a lot different. I was going to be focusing on how we are abstracting away a lot of like core infrastructure and norms that we're used to day to day. But I spent yesterday at Cake, which thankfully for those who watched the previous presentation, we got a nice little bit of a deep dive into Cake, so I can gloss over that. So the chain abstraction stuff. But also today I spent some time at the wallet area, in the wallet teams, working on some standards. And I got really excited. I made this tweet as I left the wallet standards at 12 and realized I'm going to completely scrap this entire presentation and basically give everybody as quick of a deep dive of what's changing in the wallet space and how that's being affected through Cake, so the framework, the chain abstraction framework that was done, and why I fundamentally believe if we can't get it UX this year, it's over. There is no, we can't come back from it. If you know me, I'm a bit, I like to be a little bit dramatic, but I fundamentally believe this is truly the year that everything changes for UX. And so I'm going to start with my presentation that I did back in Dev Connect, which is I started with this question. This is a very common question we have at ChainSafe. We're an R&D team that focuses on protocol work, but we also do a lot of consulting in our gaming and interoperability side. And we always get this question that where do we deploy? Where do we build? And this is such an incorrect first decision that people have to make. And it's because of an old philosophical question we have from when we first got the EVM. Because when we first got the EVM, there was only one EVM. There's one execution layer that we could use, and this followed the early 2000s standard of how we build web apps. You have a single server, and you have a single web page, and they communicate with each other back and forth. Nowadays, we don't have that. Nowadays, we have a microservice architecture where you've got gateways pushing information to different places. You've got image processing happening on the side while your Facebook post happens in some other server, and the like you make happens in a completely different one. We're far past the single server relation. And so why aren't we thinking about blockchains the same way? And so I have this example. If we have this dApp called Block Racers, today we're screwed to choosing one single chain because and we have to figure out which one makes the most sense. Where are our users at? But in reality, we solve this problem by, saying, let's just bridge some stuff, bridge your assets over, bridge your data, bridge your identity. And as we know from what we've heard from Intense the last couple days here especially, I think we can get a little bit better solution than that. So what we were talking about in Dev Connect before chain abstraction was really a nice concept that I could use. We defined this process as how do we get rid of the network tab switch? How do we go multi-chain with a singular instance of your core contract data? And that's kind of what we have here. You deploy your core contracts onto one blockchain, and you have adapters on other blockchains that are just dealing with the bare minimum thing. So if this is a application that's doing wagered bets, gambling, whatever, something in that realm, you only need to know and escrow that money on the chain where the user is, and they don't even need to know what blockchain they need to be on because you just deploy that one escrow contract everywhere, and then your core logic runs elsewhere. This gets augmented, obviously, and then you have bridges orchestrating, Intense solvers doing all the orchestration of the liquidity after. This can be augmented tenfold when you start adding rollups as a service because you can then run session keys dedicated just to that rollup. similar to other chains, and this is where account abstraction gets crazy. But this is also where I cut off my presentation. This is where I just ripped it out, and I said, we're not talking about this any further. But we're going to take hints to this for the rest of it, okay? Which is, at the end of the day, we are going to use the Cake framework and a bunch of standards coming out in the wallet space to actually, let's not say solve onboarding, but we're going to make it like as close to zero-click as we can. And I don't know if that's solving onboarding, but it's getting really damn close to giving us an experience that looks like Web 2. And I think that's what we actually need here. And so let's talk about chain abstraction. Thankfully, we had a nice little explanation of Cake earlier. There's multiple layers. Most people are deploying at the application layer. Account abstraction, KMS, intense, this jargon, which basically says, like, I want to do X and receive Y. That's there. Solvers, the ones doing the hard work, basically computing what to do. Settlement layer, figuring out how to actually, how to like finish the process that the solvers want. And that's Cake. I mean, I'm glossing over it because I think if you really want to understand Cake properly, you should go watch some of the videos from the chain abstraction day 2 days ago. Phenomenal. What I'm going to do is talk about how we're augmenting this with new standards and get a little bit closer. So obviously, Cake is here to solve this problem. You have, okay, I mean, there's testnets in there, but it proves a point. Like, you have Ether. Why am I representing it as like 5 different versions of Ether? I don't care. I have 5 ETH, not like 5 Sepolia, not 5 Optimism or 5 Arbitrum ETH. I have, or 1 of each. I have 5. That's my total balance. Stop giving me, we don't need this fractionalization. We also don't need to like understand that USDC is absolutely a disaster on Arbitrum. I don't care. I don't care. Cake helps solve this, right? Because the solvers are doing the hard work of figuring out what you have and what to give you at the end of the day based on the protocol you want to go to. And we'll get into that in a second. We're solving this problem, which is wonderful, right? It's like gas is no longer a problem. We can do that with account abstraction. Thank you to the paymasters. And this is an interesting one. I learned this more recently, but we have another problem that we're hoping to solve with some new standards. This is called, we all know Wallet Connect, yeah? This is called the NASCAR problem. I don't know how many people are American. I don't watch NASCAR, but this is a thing. So if you look at a NASCAR car, awful naming, there's a lot of ads. I don't know what I'm looking at. Similarly, we have too many wallets. I don't know, I don't care. I don't know where my wallet is. I don't want to find my wallet. Half the new users coming into this space aren't going to know who deployed them their wallet. They're going to have an address or an ENS name or some sort of domain name, and they're going to want to figure out how to get access to that. So, yeah, the NASCAR thing's a real problem, and we keep on doing this in a space. Please look it up, and please let's learn from this. Let's not do it more often. That's no shame to Wallet Connect. They do great work. All right, let's talk about some new standards, how we're like addressing a lot of this, and kind of like also what, there's a small shill at the end, what we're doing. But like honestly, at the end of the day, I really want to like educate people on like, there's a lot of shit coming down this pipeline this year, and I think we can execute it on the next 6 to 8 months. And if we do, when I want to open an ETH compound position using my DAI, we should be able to do that. And there's a few key things here. And it was talked about in the previous one. And any intense, talk you've been to will have like a very similar thing. But there's something key here that I'm going to relate back to the UX. Because most of the people talking about Cake, that will talk to you about Cake today, aren't really talking about like the front-end UI componentry. That's what I'm going to get into shortly, and that's what a lot of our standards focus on. That's where I spend a lot of my time. They focus more on the architecture side of like the underlying physical side, not on like what your average React developer is going to be dealing with. So when I talk about this, we're going to be talking more on a little bit more high level. And so there's a few things you notice. There's no network. There's no destination network. There's no starting network. There's no destination network. And ultimately, we're doing a swap in the middle. The key thing here is that as a dApp, you shouldn't really care where your users are coming from, nor should you care where your contracts are, because at the end of the day, people should be just able to deposit into it. And so there's 3 things we're going to touch on today with these standards. I'll go them really quick. Trust me, standards are boring. I've made this a little bit more enjoyable, I promise. It's wallet discovery, which is a problem, account abstraction, which we'll touch on, and permissions, which are really interesting. So with wallet discovery, so are we familiar with 4337, account abstraction, the latest, perfect, smart account modules? Wonderful. How many of you have tried to create a dApp that finds somebody's pre-existing smart contract wallet? Have you been successful? Yeah, it's impossible. It's actually impossible. Like, unless you were the one that deployed it and you know through which provider you deployed that smart account through. So if the whole goal of smart account abstraction is to have smoother permissions, so we get wrecked less, defragmentize the fact that we have stranded EOAs living everywhere with a little bit of dust floating around, how are we in a situation where every app is now deploying you a brand new smart account? Really all we're getting is EOAs we're at the same problem, death by 1,000 accounts, but we're slapping on some permissions onto it. Not very helpful. Because now you as a dApp developer, you're going to have to eventually do this again. Hey, do you mind bridging your funds or sending your funds from your main account back into the smart contract wallet? That's not what we want to do. We want to get to a place where there's modules. We want to get to a place where you're simply requesting to spend on behalf of the user's actual account. And that's where 7555 comes in. 7555's title is SSO for smart accounts. It works for EOAs too, as we've discovered more recently, but it's SSO for smart accounts. What's SSO? You've used single sign-on to use Google to log into Slack or some other third-party service, right? It's a one-click action, you get in. It's kind of like this, right? You go in, you select your account that you want to sign in with. It redirects you to Google. Google then tells you what it's trying to take from you. In this case, I think it's email and some information, and then kicks you back out. 7555 tries to do the same thing. You can imagine we have a provider login, you click it, it redirects you to ChainSafe's domain. We then know how we created that smart contract wallet for you. We authenticate you and log you in, and then we return that address back to the dApp so the dApp's aware of now what that address is. We can take this a step further though, and this is where it gets really magical. What if we have login with name, login with domain? What if all you had to do was go to a dApp, type in gregthegreek.eth, and it does a reverse resolution and looks up is this an EOA? Or did somebody deploy a smart contract wallet for the user, for me? And then it knows who deployed it and automatically hits the wire protocol, which effectively 7555 is just a wire protocol, and automatically redirects the user to the provider that deployed it. So in this case, it might be ChainSafe. It could be Pimlico, Biconomy. I really don't care. But it'll automatically know. It's embedded into the Web3 modal. And all I do is I walk up to a new dApp and I just say, yeah, I'm gregthegreek.eth. I know I can prove it. Maybe it's through passkeys, WebAuthn. Maybe it's through my ledger. But I know I have a sign-in key that I can prove I am that person. Just, you type it in, I click enter, bam. It takes me to the site, similar to how the Google login works. It goes over there, and I do it. The next step, if you're following me, is where we add permissions into this mix. So if you remember, I said, I want to open up a compound position using DAI, but I want an ETH position. That's an intent, right? That is an intent that needs to be solved. But what we need to do on top of that as a dApp developer, instead of deploying a wallet, you deploy metadata that describes what you're trying to get your user to do, what permissions it needs to do, and then what happens is the solvers act on that. This is a standard that literally is coming out of today. You can kind of think of this as all of these together as the TLS moment for wallets. And what that looks like is, if you remember here, where we have this auth page that people know really well in the Web 2 world, and I made this like 30 minutes ago because I deleted my entire presentation. Bear with me. Compound wants additional access to your account. When you allow access, I don't have the save or allow button. Open an ETH position on your behalf. But Compound also already has access to add a max of 10,000 DAI per week, because you've already actually given them the allowance in a previous state. Now we have a Web 2 flow that looks nearly identical to what we're used to. And it's all through wallets. All you had to do is type in your ENS name. Maybe it's gregthegreek.com. Maybe it's a handshake, it's clusters. We don't have to be opinionated about this. And that's all you have to do. And you might be wondering, okay, hey, but where does a user get an ENS name? Well, Uniswap hands them out for free. Argent hands them out for free. All we need to do is just set up a resolver to say, how do I find the provider? And these are all things that are coming out of literally the last 48 hours. I got really excited, and that's why I nuked my presentation, why I want to show you all this. And I think the final thing that's worth mentioning today about where UX is heading is 3074. Is anybody familiar with 3074? Auth call and auth. So it got shot down pretty hard 2 years ago. This was like a way to give an EOA the ability to do something such as approve and transfer from in the same transaction scope. As you know, an EOA, like a MetaMask, for example, is unable to do that. You have to do 2 transactions. 3074 allows you to do that. It doesn't give you paymasters really easily. It doesn't do all the fancy stuff 337 does. But it gives you the ability to do multiple chain calls in a single transaction frame, in a single .call. And I think that's really powerful. And we had an all-core devs call today where it looks like it might actually become a reality, because we can use 3074 in conjunction with 4337 to make a smooth onboarding experience for users to get eventually into that endgame state of a smart account wallet while still maintaining the integrity of an EOA that they need. And this is really powerful because we can try and 3074 actually prevents people from getting wrecked. You want to go swap 10,000 DAI on Uniswap, you typically accidentally hit unlimited. 3074 will literally only approve 10,000 because it's in the same scope. There's no difference. The gas cost is marginal. It's a really big improvement. And I would highly advise everyone to listen to all core devs that happened today. Just the small segment on 3074, you understand why 2024 is going to be a huge year. We might actually solve a lot of the onboarding issues, and we're probably going to do it a lot sooner than December. On a final note, a small shill, super small. This resolution, nice. This is something that we have been working a lot from an R&D perspective at ChainSafe. We do a lot of research, especially a lot of UX research in the interoperability space. If you're a DApp and you're looking at how can you do a deep integration with something like solvers that maybe the across team talked about earlier, or how do you basically obfuscate the network tab from ever existing inside, give us a chat. We've got some people in beta with some of our products that we're working on. Super unopinionated. It uses off-the-shelf tools. It's not brand new proprietary stuff that we're working on. We make sure to use the best solver, the best bridge, the best whatever exists at the available moment for what you need to do. Because at the end of the day, we want to, everything I talked about today, we're not even working on half that stuff. We're working on some in 555. Everyone else is working on the other stuff. But we want to bring it all together and make sure that you have the best from the UX, the front end perspective, to really build the best applications so you can attract users from every single chain and not just the one you deploy on. Because I think that's, by the end of 2024, you will no longer be asking what chain you deploy on. You'll be asking, how do I get access? It won't even be a question of how do you get access to every user. it's just going to be, part of the npm install walkthrough flow to just say like, oh yeah, like any user can use my app. I don't care if they're on Arbitrum, Optimism. To be honest, near Solana, it doesn't matter. You should be able to get access to every single user, and that's really where the future UX is going. 2024 is the year. And yeah, thank you. If you want to connect with us, I'm Greg the Greek everywhere. This is a link tree. You can get to ChainSafe from there as well. And thank you. I will field a question, but like I don't know. This was kind of like philosophical. It's probably not. And yeah, thank you.